We are live tonight, and we begin with a Fox News alert. There is renewed optimism a summit may happen as the U.S. team in North Korea is preparing to meet again with their counterparts. That is happening on the northern side of the DMZ. We've got a live report straight ahead. Plus, the Trump administration pushing back hard tonight on reports about unaccompanied immigrant children here illegally. We've got late-breaking details. And on this Memorial Day, an Army troop reunites 11 years after a tragedy. Together, they lead a small-town parade and give true meaning to honoring Memorial Day. You do not want to miss that story. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We begin tonight with North Korea, as it appears President Trump is back on track to meet dictator Kim Jong-un. New reports tonight. The U.S. has halted sanctions against the rogue regime as the two sides continue talking. Kristen Fisher is here with details. Good evening, Kristen.
Hey, Shannon. Well, there is mounting evidence that this on-again, off-again summit may end up happening after all. In addition to the U.S. team on the ground in North Korea, you also have the White House holding off on implementing new sanctions as these talks continue. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. And then there's a new statement tonight from the White House, which actually describes this summit as an expected meeting. President Trump spent part of his Memorial Day on the phone with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The White House says the two agreed to meet in person to continue close coordination in advance of the expected meeting between the United States and North Korea. Just 2 days after calling the summit off,
I've decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th.
On Saturday, President Trump did an about-face from the Oval Office.
It's moving along very nicely. So we're looking at June 12th in Singapore. That hasn't changed. And it's moving along pretty well. So we'll see what happens.
Some U.S. officials worry that with 2 weeks to go, there's not enough time to prepare for a meeting of this magnitude. But the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, argues this is all playing out perfectly.
He canceled it, and now we have Kim Jong-un back where he was before, talking about wanting to do it, meeting with the leader of South Korea. So I don't want to raise expectations, but I think the president's strategy has played out really brilliantly.
After that surprise meeting on Saturday, the president of South Korea said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un committed to complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, which is exactly what the White House wants. But many lawmakers on Capitol Hill, including some Republicans, remain deeply skeptical that the North Koreans will ever abandon their nuclear weapons.
So my suspicion remains that he is going to try to get as much sanctions relief as possible without having to give up his weapons. And I think it's going to be a lot of twists and turns along the way to try to get there if it's even possible.
Another potential sticking point, the South Korean president said that Kim Jong-un still isn't sure that he can trust the U.S. He continues to be concerned by comments made by the vice president and the national security advisor, John Bolton, that perhaps the U.S. would follow the Libya model in North Korea. Shannon.
Did raise eyebrows on all sides of this conversation. Kristen, thank you very much. President Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, offering rare praise for President Trump's unusual diplomatic approach to his North Korean counterparts.
This is typical North Korean, one step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's what they always do. And in some ways, Kim Jong-un may have met his match here with our very unconventional president.
All right, let's bring in Cliff May for analysis, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Cliff, welcome. Great to have you with us tonight.
Thanks. Great to be here.
What do you make of former DNI Clapper's assessment that maybe Kim Jong-un has, quote, met his match in this president?
Well, coming especially from James Clapper, that's quite a compliment for President Trump. President Trump obviously does diplomacy unconventionally. And I think what Clapper is saying is maybe this is going to have an impact that we haven't had in the previous administration or the administration before that or the administration before that, because we've been going back and forth, not succeeding with North Korea for about a quarter of a century.
Okay, so there are a number of countries that are critical to us getting this done. We saw there the president talking with Prime Minister Abe, but when it comes to China, when it comes to Russia, and many other countries that are not essentially enforcing the sanctions in full, what partners do we need to get on board in order to actually make something happen?
The hardest partner and the most consequential is, of course, China. And China has seen North Korea as an asset. It's pit bull. It barks a lot. It bites at America's legs. It keeps America distracted, and it represents a threat to America. And China has seen that as a good thing. What has to change? China has to see North Korea not as an asset, but rather as a liability. That's not easy, but it's not impossible. That's going to probably require President Trump putting a lot of economic pressure, not just on North Korea, much more than he has already, but also on China. That will hurt China, may hurt the U.S. as well, but unless he shows that he's willing to do that, and a couple other things we can talk about, China is not going to see this as its problem to solve.
Well, and I know that North Korea's economy, among other things, is very opaque. It's tough for us to get a real look at what's happening there. And there are some accounts that I read today that said financially they're not doing as bad as people would think maybe that they are. There's still currency flowing, that they've got weapons that are trading throughout the Middle East, that the unrest there actually benefits them in many ways.
The strategy that the president has talked about with North Korea, and by the way, with Iran as well, is one of maximum pressure. Maximum pressure means that the U.S. economy is so strong. We can put such pressure on, sanctions not as bee-bites, sanctions as sledgehammers up the side of the head, that we can crush a foreign economy like North Korea, so we can make it crumble. So there are two questions. Can we actually do that? And will we actually do that? Because we haven't before. If you want to look at an analogy, we had very tough sanctions on Iran before they came to the negotiating table. We lifted them. President Obama lifted them. The economy of Iran went from substantial recession into recovery, and we never got another concession after that. Now, already, North Korea has had about a 2-month respite from serious sanctions, and is probably going to get, as I understand it, another respite between now and June 12th. I think that the president has to put very tough sanctions on so that Kim Jong-un looks around and says, my economy could actually implode. That would be dangerous. Plus, this guy Trump is so crazy, he might even use military means. I don't want a missile on my breakfast table one morning.
That is very motivating for folks if they think it's a real possibility. All right, Cliff May, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us tonight. Great to have you.